not letting me do this. Let's see. Meeting ID 830 64 7 2894. Please enter the meeting passcode. Yes, please. Okay. Hello.
Hi. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm Cherie's mom.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome. You sound just like your sister.
Oh, everyone always says that. I know our mom always says that she can't tell us apart. So we always think that it's funny. So I have a lot of materials and stuff out today. So let me get situated here. Okay. So okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. So let me turn on my video.
There you
Okay,
are.
hello. Hi. And I'm going to be working off of this. Let me turn my screen a little bit so you'll be able to see what I'm doing a little bit better. Okay, so today we're going to do a project that is inspired by the artist Elizabeth Catlett. Amongst other things, she was a printmaker, but she also did sculpture. She was an educator for many, many years and also an activist. And we are actually going to do a printmaking project. And I wanted to talk a little bit about her before we got started. So I'm going to share my screen with you all. And let me move this out of the way. So we can get the whole screen. Sorry, my computer is, okay, here we go. I was gonna say it's going a little slow today. So I have been focusing on trying to do projects inspired by a different artist each month. Some of the artists are a little more well-known, some might not be as well-known, and that's one of the reasons why I've been trying to highlight them. And so Elizabeth Catlett is one that some people may be really familiar with, but oftentimes she is an artist, though extremely talented, is not widely known. And so I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about her and then get into a project. So Elizabeth Catlett was born in 1915. And for many years, she lived in DC and Washington, DC. And both of her grandparents were freed slaves. And so that history really is an important part of the work that she created, and this idea of storytelling and using narratives and the images that she used to kind of tell a story. And she, as I mentioned, was not only an artist, visual, and working in printmaking and sculpture, but also an educator and an activist. For many years, she taught drawing, painting, and printmaking at Dillard University, but in the later 1940s and 1950s, she also spent many years teaching art in Mexico and also creating art there. And you will see some of those influences in her work. She used abstracted forms or figures, organic shapes, and kind of stylized some of her figures in her work. And the piece that's on this slide right here is actually a piece that is in Sacramento. It is a piece, a sculptural piece by Elizabeth Catlett. And it was originally located downtown Sacramento around 13th and K area by the convention center outside. And some years ago, it was damaged, and it was actually moved and relocated to the Crocker Art Museum, where it is still housed as part of the museum collection there. So it's a piece that you can go and visit if you happen to go to the Crocker. So her printmaking usually depicted what she called ordinary people. So again, going back to her history, her family history of the history of her family and she being a descendant of slaves. And so many of her prints depicted people laboring in fields, working with their hands, and really showing a lot of portraits and really kind of expressive faces and hands, when she does show hands in her work. And a lot of her 2D and 3-dimensional works, you can usually see through the narrative of maybe a color or a design, or again, that expression on their face, a message of justice or activism or empowerment. So taking these images of ordinary people and really highlighting them. And here is an example of one of those pieces. And this is a piece called Roots. And her work really shows a mixture of both abstracted and figurative styles from the modernist tradition, but also the influences of African and Mexican art. And so in this piece here, I included this piece actually because, as I mentioned, in her work and showing people as laborers or working in the field, sometimes the facial expressions and the hands or the action that people are engaged in her work is really important part of the story that she's trying to tell. And so I wanted to include this piece because it was a good representation of the hands that I was mentioning earlier. Elizabeth Catlett used a kind of printmaking called linoleum block, and the linoleum block method. And so she used a sheet of linoleum that was actually attached to a wood block and used different carving tools to kind of etch a design into that surface. And I included an example of linoleum blocks, just so you can kind of see that type of printmaking method. And you can kind of see from this image the intricate designs that you can get with this method. In Catlett's work, you can see all of those etched lines, you are used to kind of build up the figure or the background or whatever objects she's depicting in her work. And this type of printmaking is actually really conducive to creating those types of designs and making those lines to help kind of build up those forms. The project that we're going to do today, we're going to be using Styrofoam, although some of those same principles can still be applied using the etching or the carving to create a design. There are a few limitations in that, depending on the design that you choose. Sometimes you might not want to do lines that are too close together, just by nature of the Styrofoam. It could be a little too close, and so sometimes that design might get a little muddled, but you can still use something to kind of carve into it, and I'll go over that in just a second. And here's another image of Elizabeth Catlett, and you can kind of see all of those different lines. So those the areas, the light areas are the areas where that linoleum has been carved away, and so the areas that you see that are black is where the ink is on the print block. And we're going to, as I mentioned, use Styrofoam to kind of use that same principle that we're going to carve into the Styrofoam. So those areas would be the light or the white of your paper, or if you're using a different color, whatever that paper is will show through, and then the paint will be the areas that are the darker areas. So we're going to be using a few different materials, and I have a few different printmaking materials here with me. I always like to try to find alternatives for art materials for whatever reason, whether it be access to an art supply store. Sometimes not all materials are readily available to everyone, so I try to find alternatives to creating different things, because I don't feel anyone should be limited to the materials or lack of materials. So I try to always include options for different projects, because you can create with so many different things. On this list, I have a thin piece of paper. Now, it could be just a piece of copy paper. This is a piece of printer paper here. I have this image on, and I'll talk about what I'm going to do with this just a second. A pencil or some toothpicks. And this is what we're going to use to carve with. Now, I have a couple different pencils, and you can kind of see that they're not too sharp. I'll explain why just a second. And then I also have some toothpicks here that are a little sharper than the pencils, but I also have the other edge that's a little more rounded. And we'll need a paintbrush. And I have a few different paintbrushes here. I'll probably end up using just this flat brush because it'll be a little bit easier to kind of spread the paint or ink, or if you're using ink. And I have this one here too. I have some Styrofoam. Now you can use a styrofoam plate. This is just a styrofoam tray that I had left over from another project. I often use these for paint palettes as well. And then I also have some pieces of styrofoam that I already had that I had cut from previous projects. And we're going to use some paint. Now, for this, you can use a variety of things. I have, this is a Liquitex paint. It's kind of thick, and you can use whatever color you would like. That paint choice, and if you're using a color paper, you might just want to coordinate between, making sure that whatever lightness or darkness either one is, that your print will show up well. But I have some of this. I also have some of this craft paint. And I had this from another project as well. And if you do have any other type of craft paint, something that is a little more fluid would still work. And we can talk about as we go through the process of ways to kind of work with whatever paint or ink that you might be using. I do have some cardstock. And so I just have a few different colors here, but whatever paper you have on hand should work. And I do have some watercolor paper here. I generally try to use a paper that's a little bit thicker for the paper that we're actually going to do the print on. So again, I have a piece of just thinner copy paper and then some cardstock paper to put the print on. Some paper towels, you might want to have those handy. And a cup of water. I have my container of water right here. And then also some optional supplies. I have a variety of spoons here. And the spoons we're going to use for kind of furnishing the print. So when we get to the point where we have our print and we have our ink and the paper and the styrofoam are joined together, you can use your spoon. So just say as an example, we have our print carved out and you would use a spoon to kind of rub on it like this, just to make sure that your print gets down, and you want to make sure that you're holding your paper firmly so it doesn't move around on you. And you want to make sure that that design gets on the paper. But if you do not have a spoon, I oftentimes use my hand. And sometimes I like to put just a layer of paper towel just to make sure that you don't get any paint or any residual ink or dirt that might be on your hand onto the paper. And you can do the same thing like this here. And there's also some printmaking tools that you can get. So here is one that does the same thing. And it's called the Baron. And you can find one of these at art supply stores. And I also have on the list a plastic plate or a flat surface. So sometimes when you're using the next optional tool, which is a brayer, and you can kind of roll out your ink onto a plastic surface. So, and it doesn't necessarily have to be plastic. If you have a tray like this, and a brayer is just basically a rubber roller. So I have this one here, and you would just roll your paint, and then if you have a image carved onto your styrofoam, you would just roll out the ink, and then you could use that to press and put that down to transfer your design onto the paper. But we can also use paintbrushes that I showed you earlier to do that as well. So those are all of the materials. And so here we're going to talk about the steps. So the first step, cutting the paper to fit the size of your styrofoam. You can do that if you want your styrofoam and the paper to be the exact same size, but you don't necessarily have to do it that way. And I have a couple of examples. So this is an example of a print that was done with this sheet of styrofoam, and this is a image of a turtle. And so, and I just used one of these pre-cut pieces of styrofoam that I already had. And so this is the print that resulted from using that. And you can see this is just a piece of cardstock cut in half. So the styrofoam isn't exactly the same size as this. It's a little bit bigger. So if you want a little bit of a frame around your print, you can always make it a little bit larger, or you can use just a full piece of paper and your frame would be a little bit bigger, like that. So once you have your design, you are going to use it as a template. And you can do it a couple different ways. You can use your styrofoam, and I'll show you using one of these right here. And say I wanted to use one of these images. You would just place that down on top of your styrofoam and use your pencil or your toothpick and actually press down firmly and trace your design onto the styrofoam. I'm going to move this up a little bit so you can see. And you would just press down firmly and trace your design onto the styrofoam. And depending, like I said, on your design, you want to be mindful of a couple different things. You don't want your lines to be too close together, because as you're pressing down to kind of carve it into the styrofoam, you want to make sure that if you have lines or details that they still come through. And if they're too close or too defined, it might get ink in between those. And so you won't have a really clean print. And I will show you a couple different examples. So this print is an example that I did, and I was just recreating some different designs that I saw on a piece of a mudcloth fabric. And so I used a pencil and etched this design onto the styrofoam and pulled this print. So I was just trying to be mindful to make sure that my lines weren't too close together, so I would still be able to see, like in this repeated pattern, that I would still be able to see this kind of V shape. So once you have your design done and you traced it onto the styrofoam, and here I have another little example here too of this little zebra, you want to put ink onto the styrofoam. Now, if you using a paintbrush, you could just brush it on. And I put my little paintbrush. If you have a paintbrush, you can just brush it on. And as you do this, if you're using a brush, you don't want to press hard and get paint into the impressions that you made with your pencil or your toothpick. You just want to lightly go over it just to make sure that the paint is getting onto those areas where you want the ink to be. And so as you do that, you just want to, and it doesn't have to be thick. If it's too thick, the ink might sink into these little crevices. So if you still want your design to come through, you just want to do that lightly. If you do have a roller brush or a brayer, you would just be rolling it on like this. And you want to make sure to cover your entire plate if you want all of that surface to be covered with paint. And so once you have your styrofoam covered, you want to position the styrofoam on top of the paper. So just like in these examples that I showed, and here's another example of one. So you want to think about where you want your design to go. Do you want it to be in the center of the paper like this, so it has a nice frame around it? You can move it to one side or the other. It really just depends on the design that you want to create. So you want to press your plate onto the paper. And so once you have it on there, you want to make sure that you don't move it, because then that will smear your design. And so I see people do this next step different ways. Sometimes people like to do the rubbing to press the print on this side. Sometimes people like turning it over and doing it the other way where the paper is on top. And as you practice and do this yourself, you'll find a method that works best for you. If you do choose to turn it over, like I said, you want to make sure that that plate stays in place so your print doesn't smear. Whichever way is comfortable for you, that's the way that you should do it. And you can use I have a plastic spoon here too. You can use a plastic spoon or use your hand. If you have another piece of paper that you can put down, or just something, again, just to make sure that you're not getting any extra paint or anything on your paper. And then once you have that and you feel like you've rubbed the whole thing enough to transfer that print, you just pull your paper and then your print would be on your paper. So that's what we're going to do. And I know sometimes when I've done this project, sometimes people like to add words to their print, and that is an option. You always have to remember though, if you do try to add words, you're going to have to do them backwards. So when you flip it over, it will read going the correct way. It's always something to be mindful of. I've seen so many projects that look great. The print turns out beautifully, but then if they've used words, the words end up backwards. So I always suggest people to do it on a scratch piece of paper, and then if you need to, turn it over so you would get all the letters going backwards, so they'll end up being the right way when you pull the print. And so that's just something to consider. And also, when you are doing this, you can play around a little bit with the amount of ink. I always tell people to experiment when making art because I feel like that's the best way to really learn. And also that's the best way to kind of get comfortable with the materials and figure out how best to work with the materials. And as I mentioned, whichever way you either the styrofoam up or the paper up, once you start to get comfortable with the materials, then that will be the best way for you to work with it. So I want to get started, but I want to ask if anybody has any questions first. If nobody does
well, I think I'm gonna follow along with what you did. I have I just printed out something. Does it have to be really dark? The picture. So this is what I printed out. I'm not sure if it has to be dark.
No, it does not have to be dark. No, it does not have to be dark at all. This was just a picture that I had on hand, and I thought it might be a nice one to do. So you're really only going to be focused on the lines. So like on this one, I would just be going over these triangles and this detail on the face, things like that. So it could be just a line drawing if that's what you want to use, because you're really just going to be focusing on laying that down on top of the styrofoam and tracing those lines. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'll follow along.
Okay, and so I don't know if you can see this. Maybe if I turn it in an angle of the light, so you can see this. So this right here, I did by just tracing one of these circles here.
Okay.
And so I just put it down on top of the styrofoam plate.
Okay.
And then I took my pencil and then I started just tracing. And I'll do a couple more of this design so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. I'm going to stop share on the screen. And you can let me know if anybody wants to kind of look back on any of the images again. So let me move some of this stuff. Okay, so I just laid this piece on top of my styrofoam and started tracing. Now you want to press firmly, and as you're going along, you might notice like you're making kind of that impression onto the styrofoam. So you want to press firmly enough so you get that imprint, but you don't want to press so hard that you're poking holes throughout the styrofoam. You can see on this print here, you can see like right there, there's a little hole because I pressed a little too hard. You want to make sure, and this, this styrofoam isn't very thick. You can see it's pretty thin, but you just want to make sure that you're getting enough of an imprint there. So when you apply the paint, you will still have that kind of white line going around your image. So I started just doing this line here, and I'm probably not going to do every single line in this print. I might add some other lines to this design. You can really do whatever design you want. And if you're, say, using a template as an example, you can always edit. Maybe you don't want to do all the lines, or maybe you want to add a little something else. That is completely fine. I'm going to probably add just some of these bigger lines in here, and then maybe a few in the middle, because I don't, like I said, want the lines to be too close together because I don't want to muddy up the print. So I'm going to continue just pressing. And as you're doing this, just know that you will probably, you're going to be going through this paper. And by that, I mean, you see, as I'm pressing, this paper is ripping because I'm going through the design. Does that make sense? And you can see on this, so I have that impression from the circle and then from that line that I just did. So let me try to line mine back up here. And as you're going, you want to make sure that you keep your paper, your template, and your styrofoam together. If you're not using a template, then it's perfectly fine. You can just do some type of freeform design and not use a template at all. I'm going to do a few more lines using this template, and then I'll probably add a few designs of my own. And I'll move my hand out of the way a little bit so you can kind of see how I'm going along. And I'm not doing every line in the middle of this circle either. I'm just doing a few. So you can kind of see that. And I'm going to add a few lines to this. As you're going along, if you are using a template, once you take it off, you might need to just go around it a little bit more and define these impressions just to make sure that you get clear lines when you're ready to do your print. So I'm going to go back over a few of these with my pencil. And if you're using a toothpick, and I'll show you this as an example, since the toothpick is a little sharper, it cuts into the styrofoam a little bit better than the pencil. So you just want to make sure that you apply enough pressure to make your lines, but you don't want to cut all the way through the styrofoam. And you can use the backside of this too. And sometimes people might use the back of a paintbrush if you want your lines to be a little bit thicker. You can carve with lots of different types of things. I think I'm going to make my lines on the circle part a little bit longer. And I'm going to do the same with this one, make these lines a little bit longer.
I can barely see my lines that I did. Do you think I didn't do it hard enough?
Let's see.
Okay, let me show you. Can barely.
I can't really see them on your plate. So, oh, I do see a little bit. So once you have it at that point and you can see them enough to go around and make them a little bit deeper, like the ones I have here, you can go ahead and do that. If you need to, yeah, okay. Once you have it in there, you can go back with your pencil or your toothpick and just kind of make the lines a little bit deeper.
Okay, and it's not gonna, so the pencil is okay. It's okay if it's
Yes,
the
yes,
pencil.
because you won't even see the pencil. We're going to apply paint to the styrofoam. And so when you turn
Okay.
it and press it onto the paper, you won't even see the pencil onto
Okay.
your print. I think I'm going to add a few other lines of my own onto this one. And then I will be ready to do a print.
The thing is, I think that my styrofoam is thin. I don't, I don't think we have like the thicker styrofoam that you have. Ours is really thin.
From a plate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, these trays, the trays that I have are about like that. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it's the same. Never mind.
So this is just cut from that. So yeah, they are pretty thin. You can see the thickness there. If you are interested in doing other printmaking projects, I know there are some art supply stores where you can actually just buy sheets of styrofoam, and sometimes you can get them a little bit thicker for printmaking.
Oh, okay.
And if you are working with a styrofoam that's a little bit thinner, there's a trick that you can just make your lines a little bit wider. So you are not necessarily having to go really deep with the lines, but if you're making them a little bit wider, your lines will still show up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So so like if I wanted to make these a little bit wider, I could use like the end of this paintbrush because it's a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to keep doing some lines of my own on this one.
I think it's working.
Yeah, you getting it? Good.
Yeah. I think so.
And let me see. I think I want to just going to continue this line going down here like this.
A little harder than it looks.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely takes practice. Because once you do it a few times and you kind of know, like how deep you can go with your carving and, and how intricate you can get with your design. It definitely helps to practice. And sometimes just working, with different materials, like, you know, trying a toothpick and seeing, you know, how that works, trying a pencil or a paintbrush, and also the different types of paint or ink that you use. Now, I think I'm just going to add, I'm trying to decide what else I want to do for this design. Maybe I'll just do some curvy lines.
So with this, so we can use this again, the styrofoam for more, or is it just kind of like one time, one use?
Yeah, no, you can actually. I made this one, believe it or not, maybe 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
For a class that I was doing this project actually. I
wow.
mean, the paint obviously dried on it, but I kept it because I really liked the design, and I thought I could use it again for, you know, something else. The same with this little zebra. I actually got these designs from a book. It's the same book that I copied this from.
Okay.
Book of different African prints. I have it, and I know I want to say I've sent it to Shona once before, like the title and everything, because it came with the CD, so you could just use you know, those prints and just or designs and just print them out.
Oh, okay.
So these are pretty old prints that I did, but I was like, I got to keep these because I might want to use them again for something else.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, once that paint dries, you could use it again.
Okay, good. It's like all this work, I want to use it a couple of times.
You don't want to just have to throw it away. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. It's just a really good idea.
Yeah, I really like printmaking. There's another type too where you use jelly prints, and they're like these. I think you can get them either squares or rectangles, and it's like a thick gel, and you can. It's a similar idea where you roll the paint onto it.
Oh yeah, I've
use like different embossed plates or something, and you press down on it so the design gets onto it, and then you press it with the paper. I like those too, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, those are nice.
Okay, so I think I've got enough definition on my lines. I'm going to try to add some paint. Now I think I'm trying to decide what color paper I was going to use. And I think I might just use some cardstock, some just plain white cardstock. And I'm just going to leave mine the full sheet, but if you have just a half sheet, that would work too. But I think I want to get a little bit of a frame around it. So I'm going to move this, and I'm going to get my paintbrush, and I'm just going to use some of this craft paint that I have. You can get ink for projects like this, and it's usually a thicker ink than just like doing a pen and ink type medium. And so I'm just going to take my brush and kind of just lightly go over, because I don't want to get paint into the lines that I did. So I'm just brushing over so I can still see my design. And if you need to, like if you think you've got too much paint onto your brush, whether you could use a foam brush, you could use a roller, whatever you've got, you can always just dab a little bit of it away. And I also, let me scoop this up a little bit so you can see a little better. So I started going in this direction. I usually like going in opposite directions too, just so I don't end up getting any patterns in the paint that I don't want. Sometimes if you continue to go the same direction, you know, with something, you can kind of start to see like brushstroke patterns or lines that you might not want necessarily. So I'm just lightly brushing over. Try not to press too hard and get paint into any of those impressions that I made. And I'm just doing thin layers each time, just to make sure that I don't build up too much paint in those areas. Okay. So I think I'm ready. Kind of got rid of some of those brush strokes that I was talking about. So there is my print, or excuse me, there's my styrofoam with my print with the paint. And I'm going to just use a piece of cardstock. And I'm going to just try to place it in the center, just so I have a nice frame around it. And I'm going to scoot this. I'm just scooting the paper so I don't move my plate around. So I pressed it down. And I'm just going to leave this plate the way it is. I'm not going to turn my paper over. And I'm just going to use a spoon. If you don't have a spoon, you can use your hand. But again, I would advise just putting a paper towel or another piece of paper as you're going, just so you don't inadvertently transfer any paint to a spot you don't want. And you just want to make sure that you're rubbing over the entire surface. And I'm going to move my hand to make sure I get down here too. Okay. I think I went over the surface pretty well. So now I'm going to pull the print. And so there's my design. And now you can kind of see some of my lines. So I went really light with the paint. So now I'm going to do another one and put on a little bit more and see how that one turns out. So I'm going to go back on, get a little more of this red. I always tell people that printmaking is a lot of trial and error, because it's all about the design, and the amount of paint and just making sure that you have good coverage. And the best thing about it is that you can always pull another print because you have the plate right there. It's not like, you know, making a mistake and then having to start all over, draw something again. If you have the styrofoam plate or like the linoleum block print like Elizabeth Catlett, you can always go back over it and make another one. So I got a little more paint on it this time. Now I'm going to pull another one. So I'm going to put down another piece of white paper. And I got it pretty well into the center that time. So I'm going to try that again. Just want to make sure that this paint isn't drying on here. And I think I want to try to do one from one of my older prints too. I'm going to get my spoon again. Okay. So now I'm going to pull this up. Oops. And there's the print. So the trick was just adding a little more paint. And there's the design.
Good.
Thank you.
Still trying to figure mine out.
Yeah, it sometimes it you know takes a couple tries. I think I'm gonna try to do this one.
Yeah, that one's nice.
Yeah, my little zebra.
I
But
made the zebra too.
you said you did a zebra?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this design. I love printmaking because like I said, you know, before, once you have the print made, you can use it multiple times. So if you're, you know, doing a project, say where you're making posters or doing something where you need multiples, you can just keep pulling the print over and over and over again once you have that plate.
Yeah.
So, you know, just like screen printing or something like that, you can just keep using it and using it over and over again. So I think I'm gonna print this one. And I think I want to do it on a piece of black paper, and I think I'm going to use white paint. I think this time I'm going to try this latex paint. It's a little bit thicker. And I'm just going to brush it on. Oh, I got my pencil. My pencil paint. And I'm going to do it on this piece of black paper, and I want it to kind of look sketchy. So I'm going to kind of vary the amount of paint that I'm using and see what kind of effect that gives me. I might have to try it a couple times before I get the consistency that I'm looking for, but that's okay. I'm gonna keep going in different directions just so I don't get any inadvertent patterns.
The more I do it, the better it's starting to look.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll show you. Let
Yes.
me show you right now. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how it's looking a little bit better. Okay, so this is my very first attempt.
Okay.
So this is my first attempt.
First attempt.
Here's my second attempt.
Oh my gosh, that looks so good, Sheree. That's awesome. I really like that
Here's
one.
here's
Oh,
my
yeah.
third attempt. And
So
then
you
here's
added,
the fourth attempt.
oh my gosh.
I
That
like
looks
the fourth
really
one.
good. Yes.
So first, second, you could start to see the features. Third, I put too much
Yeah.
lipstick. And then the
Yeah.
fourth.
Yeah. Those look amazing. I like the second one because it's almost like a ghost print. Like you can see that it's a face,
Yeah.
but it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, I
not
love that.
bad.
I totally get that. Yeah, that looks really good. Oh my gosh, I love those. And see, now that you have
Thank you.
the template, you can just keep making more of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I could just keep making
I
more.
love how that
So
turned
here's the
out.
one. Thank you. Here's the one that my mom did. Hold on. So she just did it. Here's the
Oh,
styrofoam.
yeah. That turned out so good. I love your design.
Like it's a zebra.
Yes. Yes, it's a zebra.
I don't know if you can tell.
I'm still. No, I can. It looks really good. I'm trying to still apply the paint to the one I was trying to do. So let's see how.
Yeah, she just painted it.
Okay, so are you gonna pull a print off of that one?
I don't think she.
I'm trying to.
Are you gonna?
Oh, like that? Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know it was supposed to do that.
She didn't understand.
Oh, okay. So you have paint on it,
Yeah.
and then you can just turn it over and press it down onto a piece of paper. And you just want to make sure that you don't move the piece of paper once you have it down. And so I just did this one. So this is my print, my styrofoam, and I'm just gonna press it down. I know I got a little bit of paint on the back of it. So I'm just gonna rub it so the paint will get onto the piece of paper. And then I'll pull it up and hopefully the little zebra design will come out. But I wanted it to kind of look a little distressed. So we'll see. And you can always, you know, once it dries, if you have like little touch-up things that you want to do to it, you can always go in with a little brush and add that. So let me see now.
So I'm just adding a little background to mine. And then I'll show you again.
So that's the
Oh, that's cute.
That's the one that I did with the white on the black paper.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I used the same little zebra that I had before. I just put some white paint on it and I did it on the black paper.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I did a couple, like when I was doing these, like this I did as an example. This was an old print. I wish I had saved this one. It's like a little microphone, the black and the brown. I really like this one, the green with the red, you know, because they're complementary colors.
Yeah.
I really like the contrast of that. And then I had one, and then this one, well, the original one that I showed you, the black and white. I mean, the combination of black and white is always a good combination, you know, because of the contrast.
How did you get the white?
How did you do that? What was that?
How did you do that one?
For this one? This one, actually, when I did this one, I think I had a roller brush, like the little roller that I showed you before, this one. And I just rolled it over the styrofoam plate and then pressed it. Ideally, you would want either like a foam brush or something like this, or an actual brayer. I had one, but my green paint dried up on it. I've had it for years, and so it was just the dried up paint was a little too thick on it. But you want something that you can get kind of a consistent layer, and like that's not going to show your brush strokes. So like when I was using the paintbrush and I was brushing it on and going in different directions, ideally you would want something that you have to do that with. So something like this works a little bit easier, and you even just like a simple roller brush would even be helpful. But the rubber brayers are great, especially if you have like a separate piece. So I've used like a piece of plastic or something, or even like a painter's tray, you know, to kind of roll it out. Works. Just get a more consistent layer of paint when you do it that way. And so if I were to do this again, I would, or, you know, after like this time, if I did this project again, suggest people get like a roller brush or something like that for consistency's sake. But that's what I used for this one. And I did a pretty thick coat of the black. So that's, you know, why you can really see the contrast between the design that I did and that black paint.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this is printmaking. Oop, red paint on my hands from the other one. But yeah,
I'll show you.
this, oh,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
touched it. No, I was just saying, I got paint on my thumb and I just touched it. You see my spot? I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
realize that I had paint on my That's
So
why when
here,
I mentioned when you are doing your rubbing, oh my gosh, that looks really cool. Those turned out nice. But I tell you, I'm loving number
thanks.
2. Like that one, that I just love it. I
Oh,
love
number
how it's
2.
so subtle. Yeah, I love how it's so subtle, but you still get that impression of that profile. I'm digging that one.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, number 2, I was like, oh, okay, it's starting to look out. Because when I did number 1, I just thought, oh, I don't know how this is gonna go.
Yeah.
Not sure what she has doing here. I'll do my mom's. She didn't do hers. She tried to do it. It didn't come
Okay.
out. So I'll do the zebra right now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I want to see how that turns out.
Yeah, just give me a moment and I will get it going.
Okay. I was so happy that I still had these plates because when I decided that I was going to do this project, I was like, I know I have these plates. I just have to find them. I just have to find them. And I kept looking. And then I usually have a box that I keep like sample projects and things. And it was all the way at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, at least you found them.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always try to keep things like that because I never know when I'm going to use them again.
I know. Then you're like, oh, I wish I had that.
Yeah, I wish I still had this one that I made. Because I like the design of it. But I can make another one of that. I'll keep these. And then if you do decide that you want to use your plate again, as long as you used like something that's acrylic based, so the paint on it will completely dry, you should be able to use it again. If you use something that would generally come off, say if you got it wet again, like any type of temper paint or something like that, you would probably need to clean the plate, like wash it off, because that paint, once it gets wet by applying another layer of paint, would come back and muddy up whatever color you're using. But as long as you're using something that's acrylic that would dry, you could just do another one over it. Now, if you think you're going to keep doing lots of layers, you might want to just clean it off now while it's still wet, so that way it won't add any unwanted texture the next time you want to do it again.
So you mean lots of layers, like as in different colors, or what are you talking about, lots of layers?
Yes. So like the little turtle one that I showed you, I only ever used green paint with this print. Like that was the only color I ever did. And I just left it on here the way it was. So I didn't wash this off, but it's acrylic paint. So if I say wanted to do this print again, I could just roll on another color, and this green wouldn't mix with the other color because it's completely dry.
Okay.
But if you were saying coastal paint or something like that, that would come off, you know, if it got wet again, then you would want to make sure that you cleaned your plate completely so it wouldn't mix with another color if you wanted to do it
again. Okay. So I just did one, but it didn't come out. So I'm gonna try another one. It came out like the first one that I did with mine.
Okay. Okay.
Let me try it again.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a few tries.
Yeah.
My brush.
So it's really refreshing to know that this can actually be affordable.
Yes. Yeah, I always like, and this is something that I've always tried to do when I do art projects, is, doing something with materials that people might already have at home,
Yeah.
because I never like the feeling that art isn't accessible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So whatever you've got at home, to use, I say, try it. And I usually try to have alternative suggestions, just like using this, this Baron. It's a great tool to use, especially if you are going to be doing a lot of printmaking. But if you don't have it, you could just as easily use a spoon and it'll do the same thing, and like you can get wooden spoons from, like the Dollar Tree if you need to, and do the same thing. Or you can use, when I was doing this project, I wouldn't tell kids to go just grab a spoon from the kitchen, because I wouldn't want them to get paint or something all over their family's spoons. But plastic spoon, as long as you don't put too much pressure on it, will do the same thing.
Yeah. Okay, so I just did number 2 and I'm gonna do number 3.
Okay.
Number 2 came out better than number 3
Oh, good.
did. So it's getting closer. I think I have to just add a lot more paint. I don't know if that's the secret.
Paint. Sometimes it's just really just figuring out what's the right amount to get a good print, but not seep into your lines and, lose that definition.
Yeah. Because if I add too much, then it's gonna look like a big blob.
Yeah.
Okay. I might have added too much, but that's okay. I mean, you can still tell that it's a zebra, which is good.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. That's what counts. Also, it might be that stuff is just drying kind of quickly because it's hot over here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the acrylic might be drying quickly. I'm trying to go as fast
It's drying too fast on the plate before you get a chance to do the print.
Right. I think that might be it. What's going on? Okay. Let's see. Hopefully, you didn't mess up number. Oh, okay. I think the third one is a donkey. It's a cute donkey. So hold on.
It's a cute donkey.
Yeah. It's a donkey. Let me show you. Okay, so I'll start with number 1.
Okay.
So there's
Okay.
number 1.
Okay.
Here's number 2, actually. Not too bad. Here's number 3.
Okay. I can see it. And which one's number 3?
This is all of them.
Oh, okay. I can
This
kind
one.
of see that
The middle one.
that middle one's number 3.
So number 1, 2, the bottom left.
Mm-hmm. Now, see, number 2, I can kind of start to make out that that's a zebra.
Yeah. Yeah, number 2.
I think, you know, the number 2s are my picks.
I guess so, huh? Second time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna put a background to it. Maybe
Oh,
the
okay.
lines just weren't defined or something. I think the
And
zebra
once
might be.
that paint is completely dry, I was going to say, once the lines are completely dry, you can always go back in with your pencil or your toothpick and define them again.
Yeah, I could do that. Okay, I'm gonna add a background now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did I put the other paper? This one's pretty dry now.
This was fun though. I really like how.
Thank you for
I
joining
really
me.
like it. Oh yeah. We always love coming to your
Good.
class. Here's in Shannon.
Good. Well, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to peek in on her project too, because I really like Alma Thomas. I've done projects inspired by her work before too.
Yeah, hers was fun as well.
I'll have to, oh, you know, I'll take pictures of the ones that I did today and then some of the other samples, and I'll post them to the Sojo page.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
people can see what we did.
And I'll post what I did with you and with Shannon on Instagram.
Okay, great. Oh, good.
Yeah, I try to record.
You know, sometimes I'm really good about posting to one and not the other. Like, I know I need to do both.
Yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah, I'll post some pictures.
Because nowadays a lot of people like to just watch art being created.
Yeah. So I gotta make sure that I post to both. And let me see. I'll post this one. Oh, I might have to take a different picture of the shadows coming out on some of these. Yeah, I'll make sure I share these. Oh, thank you both so much for joining me today.
Oh, you're welcome. That was fun.
Good.
Yeah, we had a great time.
Yeah, so
This is what I did with Shannon.
Good.
Oh. Oh, I finished the background.
Oh, I
This is
like
the
the
background.
color choice.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
this is the one with Shannon.
Ooh. So was that all with paint and then you added some like scrapbooking paper?
Yeah, I
I like
did
those
the
designs.
collage part. Thank you. I did the collage and then
Yeah.
I added the rest. The lines.
The paint.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
the
turned out
paint.
good.
Yeah. Thanks. I'll post it as soon as I finish up
Okay.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll post these too.
Yeah.
I gotta clean up my mess a little bit. But thank you so
Yeah.
much. And I will have another artist next week. I'll have to peek in on the second Saturday festivities too and see what's going on there. See what's happening.
We will.
But as always, thank you for your company today. And I will see you next month.
Okay, we'll see you next month. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good Saturday.
You do.